See one of the most well-preserved dinosaur fossils ever discovered, learn about the 200-million-year-old dinosaur that was dug up from Antarctic ice, and a 20,000-year-old woolly rhino encased in Siberian permafrost. This video supposedly shows a woolly mammoth crossing a river in Siberia. It quickly went viral, racking up 3 million views on YouTube and more. People couldn't help but wonder if the mammoth had been living for centuries in remote parts of Siberia, completely untouched by humans. Now, whether you think this video is a hoax or not, there have been some interesting reports of supposed living mammoths. They're believed to have gone extinct over 10,000 years ago, but there are still stories floating around about them being spotted in some of the world's most remote places, especially in the northern hemisphere's tundra. Native American tribes have been telling tales about these creatures for years. The Northeast Algonquins talked about a great moose with a weird extra limb growing between its shoulders that it used to prepare its bed. The Naskapi people from northeastern Labrador spoke of a monster with a long nose that it would use to hit people. Even Siberian tribesmen have reported seeing large, shaggy beasts roaming around, though no one's actually caught solid proof. There have been mammoth sightings across Asia, South America, North America, and Russia. What you're looking at here is a massive-sized sturgeon. The footage originally posted by Ronald Drago was shared and reposted all over the internet, and it's easy to see why. The creature is just a monster. The sturgeon is an ancient creature that's been around since the early Jurassic period. Some of these fish can grow over 20 feet long, which is as big as a great white shark. They mostly feed on small animals from the ocean floor and are harmless to humans, but because of their size, they can still pose a threat. There have been reports of sturgeons leaping out of the water, landing on boats, and causing serious injuries or even death. They can weigh over 1,000 pounds. This footage here was posted to YouTube by Adam Pitts, who'd hauled in this Jurassic era sized beast in Florida. A bunch of hunters had been trying to snag this thing because it was responsible for some deaths. No surprise there. This gator was not missing out on any meals. Pitts and his team had a long battle with the gator before finally hauling it out of the lake. It was about 12'8". It's sad, but unfortunately some animal populations just need to be controlled sometimes, especially when it comes to people's safety. This wasn't just a hunt for the thrill of it, it was for the protection of the community. Hagfish. These are one of the most bizarre and ancient creatures still alive today. They've been around for over 300 million years, and just to put this into perspective, this means they were swimming around before dinosaurs came about. These things are often called slime eels. As for why, I'll get to that in a moment. Now, they aren't actually eels, and some scientists even question whether they should be classified as fish. One of the most fascinating things about the hagfish is its unique anatomy. They do have a skull, but they completely lack a spine. They also have 2 brains. And I don't think I've ever heard of a creature with 2 brains before. That's crazy. Hagfish spend their nights scavenging for food, feeding mostly on the carcasses of larger animals that sink to the ocean floor. They have a strong sense of smell, allowing them to locate food sources. In 2011, researchers made a pretty interesting discovery. Hagfish can actually absorb nutrients through their skin and gills. This makes them one of the only vertebrates known to have this ability. It's especially useful when food is scarce. It just increases the surface area available to absorb nutrients. But as promised, of course, we gotta get to the reason behind the slime eel nickname. Well, these things have the ability to produce this thick, sticky slime that can clog the gills of other fish, making it nearly impossible for them to be eaten. This defense mechanism is so effective that hagfish have virtually no natural enemies, making them one of the ocean's most resilient animals. The lancetfish has a very prehistoric look. They got these sharp teeth and that big sail dorsal fin on the top. And this is its scientific name, Alepisaurus ferox. If I didn't know any better, I would think that was a dinosaur. These fish can get pretty big too. Some can grow up to 2 meters or about 6'6". They can be found in nearly all oceans except for the polar regions. They're aggressive hunters, feeding on smaller fish and squid, but they've also been known to eat members of their own species when no other options are around. I'd never heard about these guys until today, but I'm really glad that I've discovered them. They may be on my list of top 10 favorite fish now. I love the way they move through the water too. In 2021, scientists discovered a tiny microscopic creature that had been frozen in Siberian permafrost for over 24,000 years. The team found it buried 11.5 feet deep. The little animal was what's called a beloid rotifer, and despite being frozen solid for thousands of years, it actually came back to life. And on top of that, it was still able to reproduce. Rotifers are tough little creatures. They typically live in freshwater or moist soil and are known for surviving in extreme conditions like radiation, dehydration, low oxygen, and freezing temperatures. To confirm its age, scientists radiocarbon dated the soil surrounding the critter. Stas Malaven, a co-author of the study, couldn't believe it, saying, "We revived animals that saw woolly mammoths," which is quite impressive. I agree. Next on the list we have Sanek. In 2021, there was a pretty amazing discovery in Greenland, a new dinosaur. New in that we didn't know it existed, not a living dinosaur, sadly. Researchers identified a previously unknown dinosaur species based on well-preserved skulls. This newfound species was named Sanek, meaning cold bone in Greenlandic Inuit. The remains of this creature date back to the late Triassic period, about 214 million years ago. The skulls were first found in 1994, and at the time they were believed to belong to a Plateosaurus, but recent advancements in research techniques, including micro-CT scans, showed that these skulls actually belonged to a different dino altogether, a dinosaur that was different from any known species. To visualize the full form of the skulls, researchers used digital modeling after the micro-CT scans. These were bipedal herbivores, medium-sized, and shared a lot of similarities with sauropods. Those are those long-necked, giraffe-looking dinosaurs you probably remember from Jurassic Park. But the Sanek would have been a lot smaller than them. They're pretty cool-looking dinosaurs, almost like a sauropod mixed with a velociraptor, at least to me. In 2016, scientists discovered a 12,400-year-old mummified puppy. This puppy was discovered in the permafrost along a river in Siberia. Researchers believe the puppy died in a landslide, and its body became preserved in the ice. Its fur was intact, and the body, from its nose to its tail, was almost completely preserved. The only part that wasn't in perfect condition was the brain, which had started to decompose, but even still, about 70 to 80% of the brain was still intact. This puppy is one of the few animals in the Pleistocene era which has a well-preserved brain. While there have been other dog fossils found from the same time period, they were too decomposed to study. The puppy's condition is especially special because its brain could help researchers learn more about ancient animals. In fact, they were saying at the time that they could potentially use the DNA and tissues from this puppy to bring it back to life, which would have been nuts. Along with the frozen puppy, human tools were found near the site, meaning that this dog was domesticated and owned by people. In March of 2011, Sean Funk, a shovel operator at a mine in Fort McMurray, Alberta, was digging when he made an amazing discovery. A discovery that turned out to be Alberta's oldest dinosaur fossil and one of the best preserved ever found in the entire world. Honestly, this has to be the most amazing dinosaur discovery that I've ever read about. And I think Don Henderson, curator of dinosaurs at the Royal Tyrrell Museum, agrees, saying at the time, "Right away we knew it was going to be something good, but we had no idea how good it was going to be." So after getting the fossil back to the museum, Don and his team got to work, and 6 years later the dinosaur was named Borealopelta markmichelli. The name Borealopelta means shield of the north, and the species name honors Mark Mitchell, the museum technician who spent over 7,000 grueling hours removing the dinosaur from rock. Now, I'm not done with this one. There's just too much to talk about with this discovery to cram it into one point. So as I said, the Borealopelta was incredibly well preserved. It was covered in thick armor, especially around its neck. It also had these massive 20-inch spikes at the shoulders that were assumed to be for fighting, but Victoria Arbour, a curator of paleontology, also thought they might have been a display of health and strength, similar to the horns of a bull or tusks of an elephant. Now here's what's utterly crazy to me though. This dinosaur was so intact, they were able to see what was in its stomach. There were twigs and ferns in there, suggesting it ate during the wet season. Scientists think it could have been swept away by a flash flood. float, eventually sinking to the bottom of the sea. The body would have flipped over and sank, with its thick back and bloated belly causing it to be preserved in sediment, creating a natural time capsule that kept it safe for 110 million years. Here's another crazy thing about this find though. They were even able to determine, to a certain degree, what color the creature was. Most of the fossil was covered in relatively well-preserved skin, and from this, they were able to study pigment cells called melanosomes. Melanosomes are seen in nature all the time. It's what gives many modern-day animals unique markings like spots and stripes. It's rare to see melanosomes in fossils, but again, Borealopelta was especially well preserved. At least one component of Borealopelta's color was this reddish brown, said Caleb Brown from the Royal Tyrrell Museum. The color on its back may have been part of a camouflage pattern called countershading, helping it blend into its environment and avoid predators. Now, also in 2011, a team of paleontologists led by William Hammer discovered a new species of ancient dinosaur in the frozen mountains of Antarctica, an area that's usually thought of as one of the coldest places on Earth, but of course, millions of years ago, it was much warmer. The dinosaur was small, around 4 to 5 feet long, and had bird-like hip bones. It was likely related to early plant eaters like the Ferbosaur and Heterodontosaur, which were the ancestors of larger and more famous dinos like Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus. The fossils were found on Mount Kirkpatrick, part of the central transatlantic mountains. Hammer and his team uncovered a leg and foot, but they weren't sure if they had found the dinosaur's head. It would take about a year to fully understand what they'd found. Thomas Holtz, a geology professor at the University of Maryland, noted that the find could help fill gaps in both dinosaur evolution and the ancient Antarctic environment, saying that this discovery was from a time when dinosaurs were just starting to take over, comparing these early small plant eaters to rabbits, fast, common, and without armor, but important to the overall evolution of the giant plant eaters that came later. Finding fossils in Antarctica is extremely challenging because of the harsh conditions and short research window. Hammer had been trying to return to the site since 1990, but bad weather and helicopter problems cut short his 2003 trip. As Holtz put it, anytime we find fossils there, it's a brand new species. It's practically unexplored territory. In 2020, a perfectly preserved bear mummy was discovered in the Siberian permafrost. Siberia again. But anyway, it wasn't quite what scientists expected. At first, researchers thought they'd found the remains of a giant extinct cave bear, but eventually they realized the bear was much younger and from a completely different species. The bear was found by reindeer herders on a remote island in the East Siberian Sea. It was so well preserved that scientists could still see its skin, fur, claws, teeth, nose, internal organs, and even body fat. The remains were named the Antarctic bear after a nearby river. At first, researchers at the Lazarev Mammoth Museum believed the bear was a cave bear, a massive species that went extinct about 22,000 years ago, but this bear was only about 3,460 years old. Turned out to be a young female brown bear standing just over 5 feet tall and weighing around 172 pounds. It was probably around 2 to 3 years old when it died. The bear's stomach contents revealed it had been eating plants and birds, with feathers still found inside its belly, which is incredible when you think about it. It also had signs of spinal injuries, which may have contributed to its death. In 2016, a gold miner in Yukon, Canada discovered something frozen in the ice. It turned out to be an ancient wolf pup, which had been almost perfectly preserved for 57,000 years. The mummified gray wolf, known as Zur, was found in the Klondike goldfields near Dawson City. Lead researcher Julie Machin, an anatomy professor, called it, quote, the most complete wolf specimen ever found from the Ice Age, going on to say all her soft tissue, her hair, her skin, even her little nose is still there. She's just complete, and that is really rare. Using radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis, scientists confirmed Zur died at just 7 weeks old. The remains were especially important because they were discovered in North America, unlike most finds in Siberia, as you've seen from this list, which are harder to access. Machen and her team were able to link Zur's DNA to both ancient Beringian wolves from Yukon and Russian gray wolves, which means that ancient wolves from North America and Eurasia mixed. Jurors' remains also showed them what Ice Age wolves ate. The assumption had always been that they mostly ate bison or oxen, but as it turned out, this wolf mostly consumed aquatic animals, much like modern wolves in Alaska. And this is pretty exciting, a very recent discovery. Thousands of prehistoric bones in a cave in northeastern Spain. This story just came out back in February. So the cave is called Cova del Zargals. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not, but this is a very new discovery, so I couldn't really find a proper English pronunciation of it. But it seemed to have been used as a burial site for thousands of years, from the Neolithic period to the Bronze Age, about 7,000 to 3,000 years ago. During an excavation in December of 2023, the team from Catalan Institute of Human Paleoecology and Social Evolution found over 7,000 human skeletal remains. They also discovered a lot of animal bones and pieces of pottery. People were using this cave for burials for over 4 millennia. The archaeologists found people of all ages buried with artifacts made of ceramic, stone, and bronze. One part of the cave has even older remains too, wild goat bones and charcoal that date back over 40,000 years. So Neanderthals might have been hanging out long before humans were in this cave. Another very recent discovery, this one in Poland, a cave full of mammoth bones. In Poland's Paradise Cave, researchers found hundreds of prehistoric animal bones, cave lions and mammoths. Malgorzata Kot from the University of Warsaw is leading the current research. She explained that the cave was first studied in the 60s, but technology has advanced so much that they can learn a lot more about what's in there now. One of the goals of the new research is to understand how the climate and environment in southern Poland changed from 60,000 to 14,000 years ago, and how these changes affected the humans living there. They hadn't even been excavating for long when they found some pretty incredible stuff. Bones from woolly rhinos, mammoths, cave lions, and cave bears, horses, and tons of reindeer antlers, which doesn't sound all that interesting in comparison, but turns out it actually might be. They've documented around 200 large, well-preserved bones. Cott mentioned that the size of the reindeer antlers was surprising. They're small, but mostly whole, and the theory is that humans may have been using them as tools. Obviously, they can't be 100% sure for what, but one hypothesis they're investigating right now is that Neanderthals might have used the antlers to create barricades for cave entrances, which is pretty cool. In 2009, researchers made a really cool discovery in a cave in Germany. They found 13 bone fragments that belonged to Homo sapiens, modern humans, who lived there around 45,000 years ago. This find is the oldest known remains of our species in Central and Northwest Europe. These early humans were living in pretty harsh conditions. The climate back then was freezing, similar to what you'd find in Siberia or northern Scandinavia today. This was a pretty impressive find because it showed that even back then, humans were finding ways to handle such tough environments, and the discovery really changed how scientists used to think of the timeline of our history. Turned out Homo sapiens were in Europe much earlier than we thought, and were coexisting with Neanderthals for thousands of years. Neanderthals were already in Europe long before, from at least 200,000 years ago, until they were extinct around 40,000 years ago. The bone fragments came from a cave in Ranis, Germany. Along with the bones, the researchers found stone tools and animal bones. It looked like these early humans hunted reindeer, woolly rhinoceros, and horses.
Arctidus simus. Lions, tigers, and Arctidus simus, oh my. This one's really scary. Also known as the giant short-faced bear, the Arctidus simus went extinct only a mere 11,000 years ago. Yeah, it was once the fastest running bear that ever existed. So already we have trouble. That's a terrifying fact. Its legs were much longer than today's bears. These were like lanky, fast bears. If the giant short-faced bear stood up on its hind legs, it would be around 13 feet tall. This thing was a beast. Today's bears also have different shaped toes. Today they have pigeon toes, more or less, but back then these guys had straight, forward-facing feet. So they were athletes, pretty much. Giant athletes with quick feet. Paleobiologists conclude that short-faced bears ate only meat. And given the fact that it was 11,000 years ago, I feel very badly for humans that found it. Well, with its powerful nose, realistically it would have found them. Yeah, the giant short-faced bear, I'm gonna say its full name every time. Also, I'm not just gonna say this bear, I'm gonna say the giant short-faced bear every time. The giant short-faced bear needed around 35 pounds of meat every day to survive. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of porridge. Yeah, I hope my porridge isn't too hot. Please God, don't let him burn his bare lips on my porridge. He's gonna eat me. These things are scary, honestly. Like, they're always like scary photos, like drawings of it too. Well, obviously, there's no photos. Yes, another Jurassic Park star, and rightfully so. Look at this thing. The largest carnivorous dinosaur of all time. Even bigger than a T-Rex. Can you imagine that? 93 million years ago, they stopped terrorizing the lands of what is now Egypt and Morocco. And if you didn't already guess, its name translates to spine lizard, hence the spine stuff. And that spine was quite long. It was its main feature, you know? The Spinosaurus would measure up to 60 feet long, and aside for its back, one of the most notable features is its 6-foot long head. It's got a massive head, man. Its mouth was similar to a crocodile's with straight, sharp teeth, not curved teeth. Straight, like a vampire. These straight teeth could stab right through anything, any fish, just a big skewer for a tooth, no problem. Paleontologists from the University of Pennsylvania believe that this guy used to swim as well. Nice, even scarier. Because where the first Spinosaurus fossils were found, well, that used to be by Haria Oasis in Egypt, which was a massive swamp. Water or land? I want nothing to do with this guy. Next.